Hi, everyone. Happy Thursday. And today, what I want to talk to you about, how do you know that you are in a toxic environment and how to exit the toxic environment? I feel like I could get a PhD because I understand toxicity so well. First of all, I have been in several toxic environments within the financial services industry space, within the consulting space. I have been in environments that made me feel small and pushed me to quit over text. I have been in toxic environments that physically made me sick to the point where I lost my pancreas. And I understand toxicity because I was raised in an environment that was very toxic. And so I understand the psychology behind it. And sadly, I went through it, but the non regret that I have is because I went through it and I experienced it, I am able to teach people, directors, VPs, senior individual contributors, to be aware of the signs so that you can exit. A lot of us, when we are in a toxic environment, we tell ourselves that it is not toxic. We are in denial because we feel that we don't have a choice and we don't have options. And the unfortunate reality of being in a toxic environment from a psychological perspective, because the people in the organization are usually at a higher power and they are mistreating you, you end up telling yourself a story that you are the problem and you are to blame. So, I'm going to share with you a few examples of toxicity so that you can recognize that you are in one. So, the number one, the number one toxic sign is when you get the we will see when you're making an ask. We will see when you're asking for a promotion. Let's revisit that later. We'll figure it out. That's a no. That's not a yes. Because if they wanted to promote you, if they wanted to increase your salary, they would have done it by now. So if you know in your heart that you are performing at a high level, if you know that you're creating ROI for the organization, if you're seeing your peers get promoted but you're not, and you keep hearing we will see and we will revisit that later, that's a sign that you are in a toxic environment. Because here's the thing, to me, toxic is when you are being gaslit, when you are being made to believe that you are of lesser value when you're not, and when your company is playing games with you and making you think that they're leading you on, they're making you think they're going to make it right and not giving you a committal answer. It's almost like dating someone who basically tells you, we will see, when you're asking about where the relationship is going, right? So that's my little analogy for you. Okay, so the second sign of toxicity is when you have a manager who's endlessly encouraging you in your one on ones, but never puts you forward for any promotion or has your back when it comes to performance reviews. That is another one. So just because the person is being nice to you and is being warm towards you doesn't mean that they are helping you move forward in your career. And that is equally frustrating. All right. Another sign that you are in a toxic environment. Leadership always has a budget for what they've decided matters. If your promotion, your headcount, your project keeps getting we have a lot in our pipeline, We have a lot in our roadmap. That's another sign that they're not appreciating you. Okay? Another sign. The record gets rewritten when you push back. For example, them denying that they never promised you a title that wasn't in the agreement. We never talked about a promotion. That's what I mean by the record getting rewritten when you push back. Those are examples. Those are examples of toxicity. I'll tell you guys a little story of what happened to me in corporate. When I was in corporate, I helped my organization retain a $3 million client. But instead of promoting me, what did they do? They told me that I wasn't ready. And someone else got the promotion who was a peer who was underperforming. So you can imagine how difficult that was for me, right? I've had a client who experienced a reorg, and I see that happen a lot. If you are a director, a VP, or a senior individual contributor, and you were reporting into someone who was advocating for you to get promoted, but then that person left the organization and you now have to reprove yourself all over again to a new leader. Goodness gracious, that's not your problem. You shouldn't have to do that. Because here's the thing. That person who left is not the entire company. The people above should recognize that you were ready. And for you to have to rebuild your reputation all over again, you might as well move to another organization at the next level. Wouldn't it be easier to do that? And believe me when I tell you that if you do that, you're actually going to jump from a compensation perspective. And it's the same amount of effort if you think about it. You can take all of those accomplishments that you've achieved in your existing organization and you can share them with this new organization that has the structure to accommodate you. Because here's the thing about you staying where you are, hoping that the history and the reputation that you've built will pan out. That is almost like saying that the person that you've been in a relationship with will propose. But you know in your heart that that person is not capable of proposing. Because if they wanted to marry you, they would have done it months ago. They would have done it years ago. Wouldn't you be better off leaving that person and finding someone who's ready to commit? And it's the same thing with your organization. They're not ready to commit. Structurally, they're not able to accommodate you. Maybe they have budget limitations. Maybe there is a ceiling. Maybe they don't want to spend more money to grow your career. Why are you wasting your time? Right? When you could be in an organization that already has the right structure to have you fill it in. They have that vacancy and they need you to fill it right now. That vacancy does not exist in your company and you're wasting years of your life, months of your life, waiting for that vacancy to open up. Just like you would be wasting your life waiting for a potential partner to commit. Okay? So this is why I encourage you to notice these signs. If I knew what I know today, before I lost my pancreas at a company where I wasted my life, I would not have stayed as long as I would have stayed. Okay? There's no badge of honor for staying. You got to get rid of this belief that, oh my God, I built all these things and I'm now going to walk away and I want to finish what I've already built. Why? It's not even your company. Why would you do that? You can build something way better. The skills that you have don't get wasted when you move to another organization. There could be another organization that's more forward thinking, more innovative, where you could actually create a larger impact at a faster pace and get compensated better and not have and feel appreciated. So that happened to me actually. After I left that organization that did not respect me, I was able to build something in 8 months when it took me 3 years to build it in that resistant environment. Okay, so how do we solve this? How do we solve this problem of you being in a toxic environment? There are going to be multiple phases that you have to go through based on my experience of working with more than 1,000 professionals, and I'm going to guide you through it. I am in this mood where I'm comparing this to like a romantic relationship because that's what I want you all to think of, like careers. You just think of companies and resumes and that sort of thing, but it's all people psychology. It's all relationship building. It's all navigating politics. So, phase one, you are in a toxic environment. The first phase that you're going to have to go through is what I call the grieving phase. The grieving phase and the recognition phase. This is where you realize that you are done because there's a part of you that keeps fighting and hoping that something's going to change. Okay? Just like when you're in a relationship and you're hoping that the person is going to change. You're always thinking about their potential instead of accepting who they are. With a company is the same thing. You're going to have to come to terms and accept that this company is never going to change. And until you get to that point, you're going to be stuck in this vicious loop where you're hoping and waiting and stressing out and it's impacting your health and you're having fights with your spouse when you get home because you're always in a bad mood, right? So until you get to that point where you recognize that I'm valuable, enough is enough, I am not going to settle, you are going to be stuck in this vicious loop. So that is phase one. Step number one is the grieving phase where you grieve the fact that this company is never going to change and you're going to have to leave. This is where people come to me when they are at that phase. Before you're at that phase, I can't help you. You might need to work with a therapist. You might have some kind of Stockholm syndrome. Okay. And I used to have that where I was too scared to leave the company because I felt I was worthless without it. Right. So you need to do some work on yourself to make peace, to like value yourself before you get to this phase of making a decision to leave. Okay, let's now talk about phase two. Once you make that decision that enough is enough, that things are not going to get better and you want to leave, the next phase is to rediscover who you are. Because let's face it, when you're in a toxic environment, your self-esteem gets broken down. You've tied your identity to this organization. They have misclassified you for years. This is how they get away with paying you less and not giving you more responsibility. They give you like these, excuse my language, BS reasons and break down your self-esteem so that you can accept whatever mediocrity they're giving you. Okay? So you need to rebuild your confidence. And this is where I work with my clients on rediscovering their value proposition, on rediscovering who they are outside of this company, the value that they bring to the table, how amazing they are, instead of believing what their organization has been telling them. So that is phase two. This phase is extremely critical because if you go and you just apply for jobs and hit the easy button on LinkedIn and automate your job search using AI and mass apply, it's not going to do anything for you, because what you're doing is you have a brand that is based on what your company classified as your value, not your true value. So when I work with my clients, we rediscover their true value and we get very clear on the right organizational environments. Now, ChatGPT and Claude can really lie to you and boost your ego, or maybe even get overly critical and limit you, because guess what? It's basing its perception of who you are based on what you're telling it. And the thing is, you yourself don't understand your value and don't see yourself clearly. The way you're seeing yourself is distorted. So GPT and Claude is not going to help you with fixing that. You need to talk to someone who has been in your shoes. You know, I have been in the corporate world for more than 15 years. I understand the context, politics. I've worked, with C-level. I've helped, clients at multiple levels. So I can objectively validate what level you are and what you bring to the table and whether it's unique or not, instead of just telling you what you want to hear. I go with a very data-driven approach in terms of my experience of working with clients and as someone who's an outsider. So, phase two is understanding your value clearly. Phase three, once you understand your value clearly and you're able to vocalize what you want instead of having that scarcity mindset, right? Now we need to work on you telling your story in the best way possible, in a cohesive way. A lot of clients who come to me usually have non-linear careers. They've worn multiple hats. And let me tell you something, when you're in a toxic environment, your company makes you wear multiple hats because they have been extracting from you too much. You've been sort of like playing this role where you're like saving the day all the time. And when you're the kind of person who's constantly saving the day because you're working with an organization that's a mess, you get confused about what is it that you did. And it becomes hard for you to tell your story accurately. So this is where we sit down, we look at what we decided in terms of your North Star, in terms of what is your niche, what is the role out there. We did that exercise of understanding your value. Now we have to architect the right narrative. We don't talk about everything you've done because that's going to confuse recruiters. And it's a lot of information, especially when you have more than 15 years of experience. But we have to look for the most impactful parts of your experience in order to tell the story. Then once we do that, that's when your brand becomes powerful. That's when you create optionality. That's when you get opportunities, which is what you need in order to exit. Because if you don't have opportunities, then you're just going to keep telling yourself, well, this is the best I can do. You're going to suffer and you're going to be in that prison. And so the story that we tell in a very, let's say, relatable way to the elite organizations that you want to work for, that will translate to your resume, to your LinkedIn profile, and even the way that you network. Because when you're networking, I bet you right now, you're not doing yourself justice because you've been in an abusive environment that's been making you feel like you're inadequate, just like you've been in a horrible toxic relationship where you've had a spouse for the longest time complaining and critiquing everything about you. So you've forgotten your value, you've forgotten your magic. And we gotta remember that magic. You need to talk to someone who is going to help you remember your magic. Exactly, Jay and Spencer. That's exactly it. Okay. Um, Once we build that brand and we tell that story, obviously we need to arm you with the right narrative when you're interviewing. Listen, again, relationship analogy. You were in a 9-year relationship and you had a toxic ex who made you feel like you're the problem. And now you're back dating. And the person at the other end of the table asks you, well, why did you leave that relationship? You're going to feel awkward as heck. You're going to get nervous. You're not going to know what to say. You're worried that you might say something that is going to make the person feel like you're full of red flags. And that's exactly what happens in interviews. When you've been in a toxic environment, you start becoming self conscious. You start becoming self conscious about, oh my God, I don't know what to say, like about what happened. I'm going to feel judged. And so, what I do with my clients is I sit down with them and we figure out the right narrative that we want to share. Something that's not going to paint the previous organization in a bad light, but something that is honest so that you don't repeat the same thing that you went through. Now, I wish I had an exact formula that I can share with you guys. There isn't, usually I have to sit down with the person and we have to have a conversation. Like, this is what I ask people. I say, tell me the truth, tell me what actually happened, and let's figure out how we're going to tell the story without making you look bad. Okay? So that is the next step is practicing some of the things that they may ask you that you're nervous about so that your nervous system feels at ease and you're prepared. Because most of my clients who come to me are gifted. They're already great communicators. They know how to communicate. It's just that when it comes to talking about themselves or selling themselves, it is hard, especially when you are a leader. You have been spending so much time, vouching for your teams and protecting your teams, and you haven't been vouching for yourself and advocating for yourself. So sometimes you need someone on the outside who reminds you of your greatness, who helps you with that. And that's the type of person I like to be for my clients. I'm very much almost like a lawyer for my clients in many ways. Okay, so we go through all of these steps. We also come up with like a job search strategy and accountability. Because let me tell you something, when things are terrible at your company, the last thing you want to do is actually think about job search and things like that. And so you need that person who holds you accountable. It's almost like when you have a weight loss goal, it's easier to meet that goal with a trainer because you know that next week you're going to be showing up. You can't just not show up. No matter how tough your week is, you paid for the personal training. You have that appointment in your calendar. There's no way out. You are going to show up. And that's exactly what happens with my clients. They know that they're going to show up and see me. And so, because of that, it motivates them to put in the work. Okay? So, that's really the end to end roadmap when it comes to helping you get out of a toxic environment. And a lot of it is psychological. A lot of it is, gosh, I mean, I've had a client who was so nervous about even just like sharing what she's done on LinkedIn because she's scared, like someone is going to steal her experience. And we all go through all of these, like this anxiety. And it's so helpful to have someone to talk to as you're going through that, right? So you don't feel alone. Because here's the thing, part of why I got into why I do what I do, honestly, my story, if you go on my website and read it, when I quit over text, and I remember talking to my career coach at the time, I said to her, what I want to do in my career is actually help people like me never feel alone. That is like my biggest, mission is to help people not feel alone. And I think a big part of us not feeling alone truly is what I truly experienced as someone who immigrated to a country at the age of 18 by myself without any family. Is I feel that if you're doing work that you really love with people that you love collaborating with, you're not going to feel alone. Truly. Like so there are like multiple pillars in our life that bring us joy. Like one of them is family, right? Like, being part of a family, or like, finding, someone that you can build a family with. Like that's an important factor of happiness. And it doesn't always have to be a traditional family. I'm also a firm believer of creating your own family, whether it's friends, whatever, right? But you need to have that social aspect in order to be happy. And then the second one is obviously your health. If you don't have your health, then you're it's gonna decrease the quality of your life, and you're not gonna be happy. And the third one, obviously, is your career. And your career can impact your health, your career can impact your finances and your quality of life, and your career can also impact your ability to actually build a family, right? So, this is why I got into career coaching, is because I truly want people to feel less alone and improve their quality of life, be able to have freedom and to build a life that they want. And one of the things that I do in my program so that people don't feel alone is to have a community of other executives. Because I know that when you are an executive or a senior professional, the higher up you are, the lonelier it gets. And so this is why I'm quite intentional about having that aspect in my program. People learn from each other. They are always looking forward to coming to the sessions on a weekly basis because they develop friendships. And at the same time, they are achieving their goals of landing, $200,000, $350,000 roles. All right. So if you are in that position where you are in a toxic environment, I'm going to say this with all the love in my heart. We don't have a lot of time on this earth, okay? Make the best out of it. Don't waste your time at a company that doesn't value you, okay? If you are scared of leaving, I really encourage you to get the support to make the right decision for yourself and leave. And if you are in that phase where you've decided enough is enough, then I encourage you to book a career diagnosis with me so that we can explore working together and creating a plan for you to leave. It doesn't mean that we push you into leaving your job with anything lined up, but we create a system for you that empowers you to leave. It's almost like when you are in a toxic environment, or sorry, when you're in a toxic relationship or a toxic marriage, um, you get therapy sometimes before you leave, because leaving is hard and sometimes you need the tools to be able to go through it. You need to build, the life outside of that relationship in order to go through it. And it's the same thing with leaving a job. We need to give you the tools to get more of those options so that you don't feel that you're at the mercy of your organization, and so that you're driving your career. Because also, the longer you stay at a company that doesn't value you, the more you feel frustrated and stagnant, and it actually costs you in the long run. Like, think about it. If moving up adds $20,000 or $50,000 to your salary, you're literally leaving $50,000 a year on the table. Multiply that by 2, that's 100,000. Multiply that by 3, that's 150,000. That's 150,000 you could save, you could put towards a down payment. You could use for your children's education, whatever it is, right? So I really encourage you, if you are in the situation, not to waste your time and do something about it. Okay, so if you want to book the career diagnosis with me, It is quite simple, and I'm going to show you how. So let me do a share screen here, and let me show you guys how to do it. All you need to do is you need to click on book an appointment right underneath my name. You're going to see this button. So click on book an appointment, and you are going to see this video where I share my story. Feel free to watch it because you'll understand more about who I am as a person, and you'll also hear examples of clients that I've helped. And then you can click on book your career diagnosis button, which is going to take you to an intake form. It only takes 2 minutes to fill it out. It gives me enough background to understand what you're going through. And then once you do that, you can choose a time on my calendar. Okay? So that's how you book the career diagnosis with me. All right, everyone. This was an interesting live, and you might have noticed that the last time I actually posted, I think it was on Sunday. It's crazy. I was actually not feeling well. I was going through insomnia. I wasn't able to sleep. And thank God my doctor gave me this prescription medication, which I'm excited about tonight. I'm going to take it and just like sleep like a baby. Sleep is so important. I did not realize how important sleep is. Like, I slept better last night, and this is why I'm doing this live. But before that, I was not sleeping well, and I didn't want to, create content or even show up, with lives because I never want you guys to see me in low energy. So, I do appreciate you listening. It's very encouraging for you to attend my lives. It really makes me happy, actually, to see that you guys are showing up, and especially since I haven't done this, for the last week. If you can do me a favor, pop in, say hi, if you haven't. Spencer J, thank you so much for showing up in the comments for me. If anyone else is watching, please drop a comment, say hi, let me know where you're tuning from, and give this live a like because there is someone out there who really needs this and wants to hear it. So thank you so much, and I hope you guys have a wonderful night, and I will talk to you soon.